And call the meeting to order. Roll call, I would say everyone's here, and we have one person who's with us via Zoom. Scott. Any public discussion of any item not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we'll move on to number 4, update and discussion on the comprehensive plan.
All right.
Name, please.
Christopher Shires, principal with Confluence, the consulting firm hired by the city of Iowa City to help you update your comprehensive plan. Also, one of our planners, Emily Rizvik, is here. I'm excited to give you a brief presentation because I want to talk about a little bit of the existing comprehensive plan. But as we get this pulled up, we'll have the little presentation because this is really a time when we want to hear from you as the Planning Commission, your thoughts and ideas to kind of give us some of that initial feedback. But if you go to the next slide, real quick on the presentation outline, and I'll go as slowly or as quickly as you guys want because I really enjoy this stuff. So you want a 2-hour meeting, we got it. You want a 30-minute meeting, you got it. But want to just recap project scope and schedule where we're at. Then jump right into a little bit about your current 2030 plan, some of the major goal categories, kind of the elements, just to kind of refresh your memory, because then I have some specific questions and discussion. So Emily and I are ready to take notes of your thoughts and ideas, and really want to also leave some time at the end that you can ask anything or any other feedback or questions or comments you have for us. And then a quick recap of the next steps of where to go from here. So on the next slide, and then jump again on the project scope and schedule. Just quick reminder, 5-step process. We've got a steering committee, a couple of you are steering committee members. We've already finished that phase 1, which that's that initial assessment, our analysis. Those presentations are available on our project website. I'll have a QR code reminder slide at the very, very end. So if you want to even take your phone, if you haven't seen it yet, you can also link to it from the city's website. Right now, we're in the middle of the public input process, phase 2, and we've been having a lot of fun. It's a great community. We're getting a lot of great community feedback. Many of you have been participants. We're doing both individual one-on-one stakeholder interviews. We're doing small group interviews. We're also doing some focus group meetings. Actually, we were here all day in this very, very frigid room. It's very cold in here. It's okay. I normally like it cold, too. And then we've had a series of listening sessions as well as some public workshops. And it's been fun. There's so many great people doing wonderful things here, and there's so much passion. So we're hearing a lot of good things of what people want. They just want things to be even better. So there's a lot of optimism. Doesn't mean there's not some challenges and some issues, and not even, there are some conflicting ideas too, and that we'll have to wrestle with. But once we get done with this in another couple of months here, we'll be sharing that feedback with the steering committee. That information will be made available on our website again, and then we'll go through the establishing in phase 3, the big goals, the big ideas. And I want a little bit of your feedback even on that now. But the big goals, the big major direction, we'll refine that, and then in phase 4, begin that plan drafting, rolling it back out to the public, you as the Planning Commission, to make sure we've got it right. Still very much in a draft form. So if people like stuff, they don't like stuff. If we didn't hear them right, we can and will make those edits. We get that all finalized, and then in phase 5, that's the adoption process, where it first comes to you as a Planning Commission for your reviewing and vetting. And then you send forward your recommendation to the City Council on adopting the comprehensive plan components that work for you, and then hopefully get that final council approval. Now on the next slide, you'll see that our project schedule is really easy to read because there's so much in there. That's on our website too if you want to go through the boring detail of it. But in a nutshell, it's a 1.5-year long process. We're finishing up, if we stay on schedule, next May. So we're not trying to rush through this. We're taking public engagement and the analysis very seriously. And so it does take some time to do this. And so with that, let's jump right into, unless there's any questions, I should say we're a casual group. You could interrupt me at any time. Okay. Want to talk about our current 2030 plan. Sometime when you're bored, You could read it. It's saved on the city's website. It's easy to get to. It's a nice little document, but it's ready to be updated. It is aged. And so some of the major components, there are 7 kind of major chapters, elements, components in there that I want to kind of highlight, just so you start thinking. And because then when we ask the questions, it may trigger some of your thought processes. So if we go to the first one here on the next slide, land use goals. And this is kind of the major category under land use. And you know that's one of the most important components of a comprehensive plan, that future land use plan, plus those major goals and those action steps, policies that kind of all blur together a little bit, but that you use to help decide, make recommendations when somebody brings, say, a rezoning, a subdivision, a development plan for you for your initial review and vetting to then send forward to the city council. And so just as a quick recap, and I'm going to try to go quick through these. So, we want to promote that compact, efficient development, contiguous and connected. We want to plan for commercial nodes and small-scale neighborhood retail centers, and we're hearing that consistently with your public. Industrial development on land suitable for industrial development. We want a strong access to downtown that's accessible and pedestrian-oriented. We want to protect our community's historical, environmental, and other assets. We also want review zoning and annexation in undeveloped areas, and that's another key component. On the next slide is our current future land use map from the 2013 plan. I should say the 2030 plan, adopted in 2013. I'll get there. Obviously, you guys know all those colors mean something on how we're thinking the city is set up for new growth and development in the new areas, in the undeveloped areas, and even infill and redevelopment when you're so tasked with looking at a rezoning in town. On the next slide, I don't want us to forget, because we need to update this also. So we're updating that future land use map. We'll also be updating, and then that'll be another step, is to work with the county on this, is that fringe area plan with the county. And you're in a unique position. You're with a county that is willing to work with the city on coming to a mutual agreement on how land within certain areas is best developed, if it's going to be developed, that coincides with the city's plans as well as the county's plans. We don't always get that kind of cooperation, so that's a positive thing. And so you may know in your growth area plan, you have kind of a tiered system. You have the, no kidding, these are the areas we may grow outside our city limits. City gets a little more priority in saying what happens. But then you have those outside of our growth area, but still within our 2-mile extraterritorial review area for subdivision plat. That's where it's a little less of what the city says and a little bit more of what the county says. And so that's a real high-level explanation. The actual agreement's a little more complicated, but that's something I want us to think about going forward. Then on the next slide, I want to talk about, oh yeah, go ahead and interrupt. Ask, Steve.
Just curious, what are the sub-areas? Or what's the definition of the green highlighted sub-area, the third category?
Oh, if you go back a slide, and this is where I may ask, there are some specific areas that had very special, agreements with the county. I don't know how, you might be better.
Yeah, these are areas within our growth area where we kind of negotiated how to approach those with the county. So it's not just what the city wants. It was more kind of like a city-county negotiation. So there's special policy for those areas.
Do we have the fringe area agreements available online somewhere?
Yeah, it's within the comprehensive plan online.
Yeah, I think there's like 5 or 6, aren't there? I don't know if I remember correctly.
6, I think.
Your count
6.
is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, they're on the city's website as well as the county's website.
Thanks.
And so it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because you got a county that thinks this way and wants to do this way. You also got a county that kind of likes to do development also in the county, so they're kind of unique that way. Other counties would be like, only in the city. Okay, housing. You have some housing goals. We know housing is going to be a big component. It should be, but encouraging a diverse housing stock, housing options, improve and maintain your existing stock. We want housing to be safety. We want to protect the integrity of our neighborhoods, especially our historic neighborhoods, mitigate impact of those large-scale residential developments, and support sustainability initiatives. I'm paraphrasing, but all some good things in there. Under economic development goals, increase the diversity of the property tax base, support quality employment that provides a living wage, encourage that healthy mix of independent, locally owned business. Boy, I'm hearing that from your community too. They really like locally owned, and I think this is the community also to support that. Support that entrepreneurial activity, and I feel like there's an entrepreneurial spirit here. Improve the environmental and economic health of the community, collaborate with our other local jurisdictions, such as the county school district, and then that judicious use of financial incentives. I love the use of the word judicious. I don't normally see that in a plan. I kind of like that, so. And then on the next one, transportation goals, some good big picture. We want to accommodate all the different ways we get around. We want to encourage walking and biking using a public transit. We want to maximize safety and efficiency. We want mobility for our elderly and all folks at all ability levels, and encourage that economic vitality as well. And then on the next one, environmental goals. Recognize the role land use plays into the environment. I was reminded of that just recently this week when I was presenting in front of your
Climate action.
Climate Action. I was like, what do they call it? Climate Action Commission. They provided me some very direct feedback. Identify and preserve those natural features we want to enhance and save. Protect our watersheds, floodplains, greenways. Ensure water quality. Reduce lawn chemicals and fertilizers. Promote sustainable resource management. Continue to track and measure how we're doing towards, and I'm going to jump ahead and just say our climate action goal. Raise awareness and expand opportunities for waste reduction, energy efficiency, and so forth. And almost lastly, parks and rec and open space. Parks and open space goals. We want to ensure that we've got adequate and appropriate parks to serve our neighborhoods, improve our overall access and awareness, build that awareness of our system and trails, partnerships, improve awareness and access to our river. I had a lot of folks that have commented already on that, and then work with residents and other partners to make sure we've got adequate funding. And I would expand that and say it's also for maintenance, right? Okay. And then I think this was my last one, right? Arts and culture goals. Recognize the economic importance of arts and culture for Iowa City. Support our programming, and especially with our changing demographics, and increase funding and develop partnerships to build up on that. I know that was really quick, and under each one of these kind of like sub goals within this kind of major category, there's all these little like specific action steps, considerations, a little more detail. And so sometime you might go through them, because I don't want us to start at ground zero. We're building upon your past good work. But some of these may not be perfectly relevant or need to be rethought, and then there's other things in here that we probably need to add. And so with that, first question, next slide. Or do you think they're all valid? And we can sure click back around and look again. Is there anything missing? So that was a quick off-the-cuff presentation. I'm just wanting to know if you're like, gosh, is that all the goals we have? What do I think we're missing this or that. Anything come to mind?
I wrote down 5 things
Oh, yeah, okay.
as you were talking. And I think they're included, but it's a question of emphasis to me and to make sure that.
Fair enough.
One advantage of being on this for 10 years, I only got 2 meetings left, this is my second to last one, is you think about this a lot for a long time. And one thing I've thought about a lot is the primary geographic feature in Johnson County is the Iowa River and the contributing creeks. We really need to treat this other than as a drainage ditch, but treat it as an economic and recreation opportunity. And that can't happen without the emphasis to make that happen. Iowa City is actually a pretty old town, 1848. So I'm sure we sort of turned our back at some point on the Iowa River. We need to turn our back away from the Iowa River now and face it, because it's how we got here in the first place. The Iowa River is how people came up here. And it's just, it's a conservation effort, it's a recreation effort, and it's a economic opportunity. And I just would hate to see that not have the emphasis it probably deserves. The other thing, and this is not a criticism of anybody, it's a criticism of everybody. But it's another thing, just by living in this county since 1985 and driving around, I'm increasingly asking myself, why isn't development occurring in Iowa City at the same rate as it is in Coralville, North Liberty, and Tiffin? That's a question that has to be asked and has to be answered. We can't just say we don't know and sort of just not be concerned about it. This body has ownership of it. City council certainly has ownership of it. City staff, I presume, would have some ownership of it. And so it's a question that needs to be asked and answered. The third one, well, I'll do that one last. I think we need to actively encourage annexation to increase development. We're going to have a presentation later about part of it's going to be for the infill development. There just isn't enough infill development sites to meet the housing demand. And the only way you get annexation is two ways: voluntary annexation and involuntary annexation. You don't want to involuntary annex if you can avoid it. But you certainly need, the developers need to know that you welcome annexation. So we have an opportunity to be partners with these people to grow our opportunities for housing in Johnson County. Another thing is, I think, I don't know if this belongs in the plan, but it certainly is a fundamental issue. We don't ever talk about it, but we need to actively support growing our property tax base. I know you had it listed there, but due to the high number of government-owned properties and nonprofit-owned properties and parcels in Iowa City, well, the fundamental question is, who's going to pay property taxes? Somebody has to be financing the money that funds the city-owned, city-sponsored or financed programs, such as funding to nonprofits, parks and recreation, libraries. Somebody's got to pay that, and it comes from property taxes. So we've got to increase the number of properties that pay taxes. And lastly, this is just a personal thing to me. I know I visited with you about this Monday night, but I think it needs to be brought up. We need to increase generational wealth opportunities among lower income residents in Johnson County by assisting home ownership opportunities, such as down payment support, buy downs on house prices or something. Because if you want a solution to poverty in a long term, that's one of the most proven fundamental ways to do that, by increasing generational wealth. If we keep spending all our money on rental assistance but not helping people own houses, then the financial situation of families through generations won't change. But if people are able to own houses and then sell those, or through inheritance provide those to their families, generational wealth is accumulated. And we're not talking Rockefeller type generational wealth here. We're just talking about grandma owned a house, then the parents owned it, now the children own it. And so you start up by not having housing costs. So all your money doesn't go to housing. I just think we need to be thinking long-term in addition to short-term for housing solutions and for socioeconomic assistance solutions. So those are just some of the things I've thought about through the years that I would really like to see some emphasis on, as one person who's thought about this a lot for 10 years in the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. Others on this first one, anything missing?
Yeah, so I think those are great points, and I particularly agree with the point about the Iowa River, that that is underutilized, and it would be great to explore ways to make use of that space. The one thing that I would add is when it comes to affordable housing, I think it would be helpful to incorporate some specifics, because I think we all recognize that that's a priority, but it has been a little difficult to find ways to actually move it forward. And so I think the more specific that we can be about how we want to increase the housing supply and bring down costs for people, the better.
I really want to echo what Scott just said, because when you talk to people in the community, many people have the concept that affordable housing just magically happens. It just somehow is there. So I think we need to list how affordable housing would occur by working with developers or cities and counties buying properties and then making those available. people just, if we don't tell people how it can happen, then I think magical thinking just continues that, well, if we just talk about it enough, it will just happen. Or we could just make developers do it. Well, neither one of those things is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think you have to also consider which I think Iowa City currently does a very good job of, but you can't lessen up on it, and that is good rental opportunities, particularly for non-students. You know, what the housing market has done in the last 10 years, well, you know, if I ever sell my house, I'll have a little more in my retirement fund than I thought I was going to have, because the house, it's amazing to me what housing prices have done. And I just worry, coming from someone whose family never owned a house, that there are people that are, however, for whatever reason, lack of a decent paying job, you know, family illness, whatever, they are never going to have the opportunity to own a house, but they still deserve a quality of living that is appropriate for human beings. And so I think you can't just do affordable housing, which I am a huge advocate for. And, you know, I have family members who've taken advantage of different kinds of programs to be able to buy their first home. You know, I mean, we bought our first home because my husband got a VA loan, you know? But don't forget the people who live in rental spaces.
Yeah.
And it's not just the place that the actual four walls around where they are, but where they are in the community and the access that they have to community amenities.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with everything Mike said, but I think in addition, Iowa City is getting older in a lot of ways outside the student population. We've seen tremendous growth, and this is kind of private sector, but we've seen tremendous growth in independent assisted living memory care with very little growth in long-term care or nursing home, which ends up being kind of a bottleneck in the process. And as we experience, that's all moving to the outskirts other than one that's moved close to Hickory Hill. So it does become a little bit of just a social network challenge as well, because they're not able to integrate at the same effort.
Yeah. I definitely have heard similar comments from some of the stakeholder interviews. Yeah.
One more that I forgot.
Oh, bring it on.
Highway 6 is almost like a river going through Iowa City. If you live south of Highway 6, where I do, and I have ever since my wife and I and our family since 1983, it's really hard to get across Highway 6 because there's not sidewalks the length of Highway 6. There's not the frequent protected crosswalk opportunities. So it really creates like this segregated, and I don't mean by race, I mean segregated by access for people on bicycles and pedestrians to the rest of Iowa City.
Sure.
And I just have never, and I realize it's a US highway, so DOT probably owns it, but if you drive along there, you'll just see all the missing sidewalk sections and then count the number of opportunities to cross it safely. They're very limited. And that seems to be a big oversight.
Yeah.
There used to
Definitely
be
heard that
fewer.
a few times.
I mean, I lived south of Highway 6 in my first house and bought in 1977. And there was no pedestrian crossing. There was at the Sycamore and the highway. I think that was the only one until you got all the way down to, I don't know where.
Gilbert probably.
I'm not even sure there was one on Gilbert then, but yeah. I agree with you.
I know I went through the goals quickly. Were there any that you were like, gosh, I don't think that's relevant anymore? Or, check in the box, we got that done. It's not a priority. Did they all resonate with you, or were some of them just outdated?
I think the one thing that concerns me is back to affordable housing, not affordable housing per se, but how it's brought about, what the term itself. I think we need to reevaluate what
Okay.
affordable housing actually is. Because many times, we agree on affordable units, and they're not really affordable.
Yeah.
I think one thing, like when we're sizing all this, at the end of the day, it's the economics of it that's going to end up like supporting development and interest. So it's all sizing compared to the economics to make it somewhat balanced. That's a
Right.
fine line.
And sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I was in Omaha last weekend, and listening to their newscast, their Habitat units are going to do 100 affordable homes this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's in their purview. Now,
lot.
how they're going to do it, I don't know.
That's a lot.
But they've 100, I think they're small units, but they're homes. So we might want to see how they're planning to do that, and maybe model off of something like that.
Right.
I also wanted to just echo everything Mike said. I think all your points are really great, and it resonate with me. The one that I want to expand on a little bit, or even maybe shift the focus of, or admit some ignorance to, is the expansion. I feel like one of my personal priorities is to encourage, really, it was the first goal that you read in the housing or
Right, yeah,
development
that
about
compact.
compact urban development, infill. I think we do need housing basically of all types across the spectrum, which includes some annexation probably and a little more, on the edges. But I think anything we can do to limit the, expansion of city resources to be able to provide more housing within the infrastructure that we already have. I just learned today that Cedar Rapids has a ton of roads. Someone told me, I'm on the record here, I shouldn't quote statistics that aren't true, probably, that might not be
People do it all the
totally
time.
true. But Cedar Rapids has more, I was told that Cedar Rapids has as many roads as San Francisco. It's like, so just the scale of that, like how much the population density versus the infrastructure, it's like, whoa, that's can't be good. So just the ability to maintain some density that's more efficient for the city to maintain. And it's better quality of life, because if it's more dense, it's more walkable. So that's a big one.
Yeah.
I love what you said about any kind of financial assistance we can provide as a community to build that generational wealth for people that traditionally don't have it, I think is wonderful. I love that. And the access across Highway 6, connectivity there would be great. One thing we didn't talk about, maybe it was in there, but it's both like internal to the city, the connectivity of trails and bike lanes and stuff, so that it doesn't just like abruptly end and all of a sudden you're on a busy street, but then also regionally connected, I think would be really great as just for attractiveness and livability.
Right.
To get people to want to come live here. I was just in a presentation right before I came here about the Iowa Workforce Development does this labor shed analysis you're probably familiar with.
Sure.
And they found that 51% of employees our employees in Iowa City live in Iowa City. 49% are coming in. So that's a lot of people that, if we had the housing here, would probably want to live here, or at least some.
Oh, I wonder
big
where they
chunk of
pulled
it.
their data set, because ours is LEHD data, and it's only available 2022, and the numbers are just a little bit lower. So I will pull that. Was that
Yeah.
just?
I think
just came out?
it just came out, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
It's on
We'll look that up. That's good to know.
workforceiowa.gov/labor shed.
Perfect.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Steve, I owe you for that little tidbit, because then we can update our information.
And I want to add to that Omaha business, that's Blue Stem Prairie, Habitat for Humanity of Omaha are doing, it's 85 homes on 19 acres.
Steve, to follow up on you said, I think that one of the greatest illustrations of people working in Iowa City but not being able to afford to live here is that the largest employer in Washington County is the University of Iowa, which is located in Iowa City. I think that is one of the greatest illustrations of people can't afford to live here
Yeah.
that work here.
Yeah.
One other thing, streets.
Yeah, what about streets?
I'm on Kimball Road, and I see all the,
That's not entirely accurate.
oh,
You're not on Kimball Road.
okay. I'm on Whiting, but I have to go up Kimball Road to turn onto Whiting.
You're off of
The
Kimball
fast
Road.
And there's lots, I mean, well, they're redoing Gilbert, but there's so many roads, older roads in Iowa City that need to be redone, not just with a little tar and feathers, but with concrete that's going to last forever. They redid the Kimball Road, and they put rocks and a little asphalt, and now that's all worn off.
Yeah, the chip seal,
In a
yeah.
year. So I think we need to be a little more concerned about our streets.
You know, and that would probably be one of those specific little comments in there that's not quite so loud in your current comprehensive plan that we could be more loud about. Just that prioritization of not only just the new stuff, but the old stuff. Yeah.
Quality of life. That's one of the bigger indicators of quality of life. I guess if there's the number one thing that I think is missing from the plan is the focus on quality of life.
Ooh.
To make people happy and satisfied with where they live, and the focus on the features that contribute to the quality of life. And everything on top after that is just sort of like window dressing. Because if you're happy where you live, you feel safe, you feel satisfied, everything else is just gravy after that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
And, talking about Washington, Iowa, or Washington County, part of that is a desire for, when you're after the American dream, you think that means a giant house on an acre of land, and we are an urban city, and a giant house on an acre of land is unaffordable probably to most of the people in this room, if not everybody. And you have to get that quality of life someplace else. You have to lure them
I see your
to a
point.
much smaller piece of property with the quality of life. But look, you can walk here, you can do there. The bookmobile comes to your park, on Thursday afternoon. Your kids have these opportunities that if you lived in, rural Washington County, you're not getting.
So anecdotally, I'll say that I've heard from many folk, on their life, history when I say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I used to live here. I grew up here. I went to school here, and now I'm back. I went away for a while, and I came back. And I came back from one of the coasts. I came back from the San Francisco Bay Area. I came back from some significant living centers where people think the quality of life is high. So that is a really great sign. So I love this focus on quality of life. And we kind of have to, here in Iowa, build the environment we want to live in because we don't have the mountains or the ocean.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my son lives in Brooklyn, New York, with 2 teenagers in a 2-bedroom apartment that they rent.
And they pay a lot
But that's
for
what
it.
everybody does.
Yeah, right.
And but
Yeah,
that's,
But they have all that other stuff.
yes,
Okay.
which is sometimes a blessing and sometimes a curse, but.
Right.
I'm sure we'd love to have destination attractions here, and maybe that should be in the plan, that's important. But quality of life, destination attractions, I'll take quality of life.
Yeah. Very fair. Okay, I want to go on to the next one, just to kind of pivot the thinking just a little bit. So this is a little more specific to your operation. So based on your experience of serving on the commission, whether it's 10 years or less, what's working well and what's not working well, and how could this plan maybe help improve that?
I'll tell you what I think works really well. We have an outstanding staff for Iowa City. The people that are employees of Iowa City, the staff, first rate. I've worked in a lot of places around Iowa. You're not going to get much better than what we got here. And I really want people to recognize that and start listening to the staff and not trying to substitute their own opinions for what experts on the staff do every day and have studied and committed their careers to. I just am kind of offended when I hear, like, on a recent thing the council did, where they substituted their judgment for what what city staff recommended. I mean, I know they can do that, but
it's
is
a
it wise to do that? But anyway, kudos to the city staff. I think that's a strength that a lot of places don't have.
Yeah. And it can be so I'm glad you
And
got a thanks,
I
because
think that-
sometimes it's thankless. And sometimes people are really mean, but not you. You all are very fun, very nice. Sorry, was that Scott?
Scott, yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I totally agree. We have a wonderful staff. And so the corollary to that is making sure that we do what we need to do to retain them and allow them to do their jobs well.
Yeah.
I would
Actually, that's
say,
another quality of
in-
life thing. You want to retain the good staff you got. Yep, sorry.
in my 5 years on the commission, the two themes that I feel we've made very little progress on, number one is affordable housing. And number two, something that comes up over and over again and is important to me because it seems like we're just doing more of it and without any solution, and that is these significant areas of joint property. You know, everybody wants to live on a slope, looking over a woodland, and then no one takes care of the woodland because it's all owned jointly by the group. And we've had several conversations about that and instances of, it's not being taken, those pieces of property are not being taken care of properly.
Yeah, outlots, property owned by the HOAs, where they sign an agreement with the city to maintain it, they don't. And that's a problem. I don't know if I don't know how to change that, but it needs to be changed. Thanks, Susan. Excellent point.
One of the things I've appreciated being on the commission is the involvement of the community and the leadership of this commission in making sure that we're transparent and that the community has a voice. And I think we've been very respectful, and I've really been impressed with that. One of the other things I've really appreciated is in our packets, it lists out what the comprehensive, how this project will be affected by the comprehensive plan, or fits into the comprehensive plan or doesn't. And I appreciate having that spelled out. So, my positives.
So your staff reports literally make a finding, a comprehensive plan kind of
Right.
finding. Yeah, that's great. Well, you have a professional staff, so I shouldn't be surprised.
I mean, something else I would note that was interesting to me in this recent action that we took, where this strange piece of property between Dodge and Jefferson, the history of the crazy rezoning that was in that area, and and it made me think, what is sitting out there that someone could suddenly come along and do something awful on, and it would not be allowed if it was zoned up to date. And so I don't know if we have zoning things out there, an inventory of things that are as bad as that. Maybe that's the only one in town, Ann, and we just happened to find out about it. But it's an inventory of, something that hasn't been, the zoning would allow, I can't remember what Ann said could be built on some of that weirdly zoned land if the zoning doesn't change, and we still don't know if it has changed, right?
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been on the commission significantly less time than everyone else, but in my limited time, we've had a couple cases come forth where they need additional height, because of different circumstances. But also in my sort of professional work, working with developer clients, not only in Iowa City, but in other communities, it's often, and it sort of goes along with what I was saying earlier about trying trying to get more housing in an urban infill situation. But the ability to go taller, have another story, have a little bit more density, I think it feels like the 35-foot maximum in all the zoning outside of the CB districts. If there might be another one I'm not thinking of, but primarily, and I guess riverfront crossings. But anyways, that 35-foot one feels like developers will, it limits them. And I think I'd like to see explored, like, could we go higher or define it by, say, 4 stories, which is kind of a sweet spot, or 4 or 5, rather than 35-foot. I think that would help get some more housing in the city. And then I know the city is also already studying the parking, but the parking, having less parking requirements would also help get more housing, I think. Which I know you can't, I mean, I'm not saying you can't. Minneapolis got rid of it completely. But, so yeah, interested in like having it studied and having a recommendation on how to decrease the parking
Right.
requirements.
Yeah. How about process-wise, conducting public hearings, any use of the comprehensive plan? I think something that's a reoccurring issue or reoccurring waiver or something like that sometimes is a good one to bring up. We may not solve it with the comp plan, but we can kind of bring it to light.
Was that what Susan was talking about?
I think we're a pretty process-driven community, because, I mean, I think as a community, we have a real sense of people being treated equitably, and that's what process does. I think that's what process is, makes things transparent, and everybody has an equal chance, and I think we're pretty process-oriented already,
Yeah.
but
I just want to make sure that I'm kicking over any stones
Well,
that,
regarding process, I completely agree. I mean, we spent hundreds of hours in public hearings, and sometimes they seem tedious, but they're critically important to a functioning democracy. But one criticism I have about process, it just seems to me that if a developer or an applicant follows all the rules, complies with all the rules, meets with city staff, works with city staff in goodwill, city staff endorses the project, it should be almost pro forma that that project gets approved, because these rules have been established by the city council and planning and zoning. And if we don't like the rules, we should change them, not just tell somebody when they come for approval, say, oh, we don't like that rule. Because that's how we discourage development. When people can't predict that their project will be approved if they follow all the rules and if they work with city staff. And that's how you become development averse from different developers. And then people over time just start thinking they'll just develop somewhere else and not in Iowa City. I don't know if that's true. I think planning and zoning, at least since I've been here, has been sensitive to all sides of the equation and tried to show everybody respect. But I don't know that that's always been true, and I just feel like we need to get over that, find a way to kill that reputation that we're anti-development in Iowa City, because without development, we can't grow, and we have to grow because we need to have affordable housing, and we need to have employment opportunities, and we need to have recreation opportunities, we need to have quality of life, and all that happens with growth. Stagnant will just means we just stay exactly how we are, and nothing changes, nothing improves.
I'll agree with Mike on that. One thing that we don't really always see is the cost associated with time or professional services. So to request a change or delay it till next meeting, and I don't really see it with P&Z very often here. I've seen it in other locals. But whether it's us or whether it goes through city council or another commission, everything has a frictional cost to it. And, if it's a project that's getting held up but they still have money tied up in the land cost or so. All it does is becomes a deterrent. So we need to ensure that we're, I guess, progress friendly with our growth as well.
Yeah. You know, I think one thing was we have an opportunity through this comprehensive plan is to reinforce how and when development occurs. You know, what are those areas in town for whatever level of development? What are the areas in town? Because I'm hearing a little bit on both sides on that one from your community. Like, gosh, you know, they want to put a, you know, 3-story apartment next to me. And then in the another line, gosh, this area right here would be perfect, but the code doesn't allow for a 3-story apartment, for example. And so, like, how do we marry between those? How do we fill that gap? How do we fix that? And I think sometimes our land use plan and some of the policies and recommendations that are in there can really help figure that out. And then you have a little more to increase that predictability, because my guess is it's the rezonings that are hard. That if it's a straight up, you got approval, you're going to follow the rules, those are a lot easier. And they normally are, any city. This is just kind of the way it is. And so it's those, and I'm going to call it a consistency zoning, where they're rezoning the property consistent with the comp plan. Can we make that a little more predictable? That if we've checked all the boxes, we've got the infrastructure, it's the right size property, there's not other natural features or issues, that it kind of works. And that's where I think we'll have to take that part of this comp plan update really, really seriously and with a sharp focus.
But how do you encourage, I mean, I don't know if you can put this into a comprehensive plan, but how do you encourage development? You know, I mean, one of the disappointments as I go off the board is that we changed all that zoning in South Highway 6, and no major development has occurred down there since. And is it just, you know, we were in the middle of COVID when we did it, and so the economy recovers from COVID, and then the price of housing is going up and building things. Is it the economy, or is it, you know, did we make a mistake? I don't know. But how can we say, we think we did, I stand by that decision and feel it's the right thing for the city, but we don't get to build the stuff. A developer has to. And why are they not? And, you know, maybe there's insight into that. I'm sure there is that I don't know anything about. But what incentives can you give a developer to, you know?
Yeah.
And I think,
I have a little dirty secret on a little bit of what might be going on, just from my perspective, and it's just only from my experience, but I don't want to interrupt Chad.
oh, no, sorry, but I think actually with that, I think recently there was a good partnership between development and the builder, where there was some opportunities in the code-based design that the developer kind of built the case on, hey, these are some challenges, and then we refined it, and then they just recently went through. So I was really glad to see that kind of partnership to, okay, this is a great idea, here's some refinements we need to make it economically viable and make it work, so. Go ahead.
Frankly, what you just said is sometimes the equation is like literally hearing directly from the folks that might be doing a project, what's the gap? Financially, we have this gap, or we have this issue, or this infrastructure hurdle. Sometimes it's things like that. The other part of the equation is, and I don't want to say that this is not a noble goal of the city, is to have that good compact growth. You need competition in the marketplace. You need a lot of open land available for development, because not everybody's interested in developing at a certain time, at a certain rate, or for a certain price. And so you got to have land in the right hands, and that's so hard to do. We've got a lot of communities that we work for that'll be ringed in, hot for development, high demand for development, but all the lands in certain ownerships that have zero interest in either selling for development or being a developer, or have a really unrealistic expectation for raw land prices. We run into that constantly, which is why some cities are so aggressive on annexation. I'm not going to hear to lecture, especially your mayor and council, that you need to get aggressive on annexation, because there's some costs with that. But it's to try to open up more land availability in the marketplace. Because there's plenty of people whose land is hot for development, and let's say the fair price, I'm going to make up numbers, is 40,000 an acre, but they see somebody else get 60,000, so they think the price is 60,000. And their basis in the land is zero, so they can sit on it and farm it or do whatever for forever, and they're just going to land bank it. That's what we do run into. So you're probably seeing a little bit of that. There may be some other, maybe it's unfair bias that, oh, you're hard to work in, I don't even want to try. So as a developer looking for interest or wanting to buy a piece of property, might look away from a property that is available within the city, just because developers are risk averse. They go where it's easiest first. And right now, you've got a lot of neighbors where the land availability and maybe the perception of ease is there. Because I'd say the same thing. One of your first comments, early on, why are we not growing as fast as our neighbors? And I think there's a combination of factors. And it's never one thing. But that's just my perception. Sometimes it depends on who owns the land. I mean, I know if I own land, I want as much for it as possible. I don't blame them. Or maybe I have all the money I need and I don't care to develop. So that's another answer. And then in other cases, it's like, well, the utility extension's too expensive, or there's a gap. I can't do what I want to do because I can't make that 14% profit or 12%, whatever their margin is. And so it's complicated. That's why I think we've got to have a robust approach, and I think an open book approach with the development community on where are the gaps. So we've also been asking different developers we're meeting with, and we'll give you that feedback on what we're hearing from them. So I didn't mean to kind of give my perception there, but I've been sitting on that one for a while.
Well, I did ask you the question.
Yeah, you did. So,
It aligns with that presentation I just came from that I mentioned. The person that was presenting said that, I mean, it's a lot of factors, interest rates, but the number one thing he said was acquisition costs are just sky high. And so one of the solutions was kind of creative public-private partnerships to help bring down acquisition costs.
And I'm not even suggesting this, but especially on like redevelopment in town, one of the things some communities do is land bank. They actually try to actively acquire land for redevelopment. If you've got a lot of little parcels that are vacant and abandoned and independently they're not buildable, but you can assemble several at times, sometimes some communities are doing that, so then they can offer them on the marketplace to the development community, or even at a discount to do whatever great project they would hope would show up there. We don't see that so much in greenfield development. That's more of a brownfield, a downtown, an urban redevelopment, but.
Yeah, in my anecdotal personal experience working in different communities, that's exactly how this developer that we were working with, kind of traveling throughout the Midwest, did it. Like, they'd show up to a city, what do you have?
Yeah.
And
Well,
they had done that, and they say, well, what do you want there? And then they would just work together, and then they were so excited to, we want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. My old job, when I worked for a very rapid growing suburb, it's like, well, what do you do for a living? Well, my job is to make farmers rich and rich farmers richer. And it was just, that's how we joked. I mean, and it was somewhat true, especially when they were selling raw farmland, undeveloped, no infrastructure at 40,000 an acre. That's a really steep number even today, but some have an expectation of that and higher. That's when I work in another area and they say, oh, the land's so expensive, it's 6,000 an acre. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's free. But that's also, we have high farmland value, so it's not unreasonable too to kind of think of that, so.
So someone mentioned at the meeting on Monday, the developers that come in and put up rental property, and then they decide to not run it, and they sell it to someone else.
Yeah, land speculation,
So-
large investment companies, holding companies.
How do we stop that from happening?
I don't know that you have any legal tools in front of you to do that. That's the
Can't
problem.
put a time limit on how long they have to control those units, or?
No. Just like you can't say that this is only for owner occupied, or this, I'm not sure that as a city you have that ability to control ownership. What you can do is through your rental housing inspection, which I believe you already do this, is have a local agent and that local agent and contact information has to be available to the city. So that if there is a problem, there's a, who do you contact? And so you have a rental, and then you correct me if I go crazy on this, but this is pretty standard. You have a rental inspection and certification program. So whether it's a single-family house or a multifamily apartment, every unit has to be inspected on whatever timeline, following the basic rental housing inspection and maintenance code. They have to have a local agent. Some cities set a distance. I don't know if you have a distance, like has to be in town or within so many minutes. Okay, that might be something like that. But that local agent then is the one responsible. So it could still be owned by some company conglomerate out of Florida,
Okay.
but it has to have a local property management identified and listed. And that's about as far as we can go.
Okay.
Yeah. Every metro is kind of seeing things like that. It's because it's I mean, this is how people make money. They have a large investment pool, and you just go buy up properties.
I presume most of us up here have a 401K, and I bet a portion of our 401K is invested in REITs. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's a liquid asset because they can always sell them. So, I mean, they just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we actually have more questions, so let's keep going on, just in case it triggers something else. Any other emerging trends we might want to make sure we're aware of and considering? And I've before gone through the kind of APA, the Planning Society's list of trends, but anything from your standpoint that are like emerging issues that we haven't even had to face or we're just now facing that you want to make sure we're thinking about?
an emergent issue, I think, is, as I think pretty much everybody here knows, Corville Reservoir is becoming, is getting silted in, and that's a huge recreation, economic opportunity driver for Johnson County. So if that goes from being a lake to a marsh, how's that going to affect Iowa City? It's filling in pretty rapidly. I don't know what the timeline is, but that may be something we need to be thinking about and planning for.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike, because there's a nonprofit that's trying to, get some momentum around it, but it's really not discussed very often as far as the challenges at the res and then, what stakeholders are actually investing in that or paying attention to it.
Is that state-owned and managed, or is that county?
But
Federal.
It's federal reservoir. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Corps engineers.
So it's a flood, it's a
Yeah,
flood
flood
system.
management.
Do you know what their policy is right now on it? Like, is there any plan for silt?
They actually
mitigation?
planned on it for someday it'd fill in. They had a projected date when they developed it in the late 50s, early 60s. And I don't remember what the date is, but it's not that far off. We're talking decades.
Okay, so their management plan was just understanding it would silt in. So it's flood control, not rec.
Primary purpose is flood control.
Or
And
non-drink
when that's
water.
met, then it can be used for recreation.
Okay, got it. Okay. Interesting. You're the first one to bring that one up. Other emerging issues, sometimes it's.
Charging stations for electrical vehicles.
Yeah.
What about it?
Should that be part of what we put into the
We
plans?
require them, and
And like how they
I don't know,
are oriented and stuff?
but that's going to be
Yeah.
a concern for people with electric cars that are coming to Iowa City. How are they going to charge them? And if they're living here, is there something close?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's not Tesla. That's what's at Hy-Vees now are all Tesla's charging stations, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think we can look at it two ways. Permissiveness in the code, that they can go where they need to go, as well as, like a parking requirement, although we're trying to get away from that, right? How are we making sure that people are thinking about that? Yeah, fair enough. Anything else technology related or world change, local change related? We can't do anything at a national or world level, but just impacts here.
For us that are more senior, when did all of our parking meters become scan and scan and pay?
you just get a roll of dollar coins at the bank, that's what I do, and keep them in the car.
It's funny you bring that up. I do actually think that can be an aging issue. I know with my in-laws, they're not smartphone savvy, and everything you need a smartphone, like to travel and whatnot, it is an issue. Although if you're like fully into the smartphone, I got to tell you what's really awesome is even your meter system, the app, it's rather universal. Many cities have the same one. It is nothing for this consultant to come in and go pay his money to park in the parking structure across the street. So, but you're right. Yeah. And do we have another technology ledge that then this guy all of a sudden is too old and I can't do it? Yeah.
What are some examples of emerging trends? I'm having trouble.
Your
kinda-
day will come.
Yeah, my day will come.
Don't
I
you
just
worry
look,
about that.
I look super young, I know. So emerging trends. So often it is technology. Sometimes we think it's some of the climate issues that our storms are getting stronger, our droughts are getting stronger or longer, our wets are getting wetter. I mean, a derecho, I'd never heard that term before until we had one in Iowa. The change of how we work, just think the impact that, we have so many more people working from home. We have a lot more office vacancy. That changes even our shopping dynamic, changes to the retail economy, moving away from buying most of your goods locally and at stores to buying so much online, electric vehicle infrastructure. I had my whole emerging list, and I'm trying to remember all the individual things, but it's things like that. Climate refugees was brought up at another time that if certain areas of our country run out of water, where do those people move to? Or it becomes too hot or too hurricane prone.
Yeah. I mean, I've only lived in Iowa City for 9 years now, but I've heard a lot of people talk about how since COVID, but even before that, downtown just isn't as vibrant as it used to be
Okay.
with shops and whatnot. And part of that's obviously e-commerce, but I think a lot of it is there's just less people working downtown. And I don't know how to get more people working downtown, but having more people living downtown helps.
Absolutely does, right.
Having the library downtown helps.
Yeah, any kind of infrastructure.
Don't ever forget
Centralized.
that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
That was
There's tons
been
of
a
people who
battle
come
for
down to the
30
library.
years. I think people are finally drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
You want families in downtown Iowa City, then you build the public library there.
Okay, maybe I'll jump to one more question here. I just have a couple more. Really, these are kind of like little multi-parters. So, okay, you kind of heard everybody's thoughts and my thoughts and, some of the 2013, the 2030 plan, I should say, its major goals, major categories. What should be the top priorities? What comes to mind when you think top priorities for this new comprehensive plan?
Quality of life, number one. Number two, economic opportunity. People can't live here if they don't have jobs that they can live on.
Affordable housing that is affordable.
I would say aggressive growth. I mean, this conversation and combined with the housing thing we're going to look at next, and it's more dismal than it was last year. And we have to be the new Tiffin and get out there and, I don't know what they did, but we're not going to grow at that percentage rate. But I think we need to be not complacent about, everybody wants to live in Iowa City.
Yeah.
Well, I think optimism. We need to get away from the cynicism and go to the optimism. Optimism drives change. When people are positive, cheerleaders for a community, and it's not taken over by the naysayers, that brings growth. I mean, people want to be part of positive things.
Yeah.
I would say affordable housing and currency. I think clearly the climate is changing, and in particular, are getting worse, and we've seen storms and flooding as well as changes in the insurance market. And so we should probably be thinking about how to protect the community against those risks.
can I say resiliency?
Yeah, sure. I'm thinking climate resiliency in particular, but
But to
yeah,
to
I mean,
storms, to
go ahead.
economic change. Yeah. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I was trying to kind of summarize it.
yeah, yeah, it sounds good to me.
Okay, got it. Anything else? All right.
I agree with what's been said, yeah.
No, that's like, and it coincides with a lot of what I've been hearing. So you're reinforcing some of our themes we're hearing. Let me go to the next one. Anything else from your perspective that you think this comprehensive plan can support you as a current commissioner, and frankly, think of your future commissioners in their work in managing the growth of your city?
That all the district plans are up to date.
What?
And every district has a plan.
We can't do that. Okay.
And frankly, we probably have too many plans. Some of the lines for the districts seem to be rather arbitrary to me. So consolidation would be my recommendation for many of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, we just have so many plans, and maintaining them seems kind of unworkable. And so, condensing them and then making sure that those that remain are up to date, I think, is a laudable goal.
I hate to be one to say this. Do we need district plans? Could the new comprehensive plan cover it?
I think that's a great idea.
I was just going to say, I've never thought of that, and I couldn't come up with a reason to disagree with you.
Okay. I don't want to get
Different-
Yeah,
fired, but
Different areas
I mean-
are, when you think of the university
Lisa.
and then you think of the downtown area, I think you're going to need some differences.
I think you're right. Like
I agree.
For the
If we go out and
downtown,
annex 200 acres,
Yeah.
that's a different animal
then
than,
downtown, something, yeah.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that argument.
I'm sorry.
No,
But Chris, you're saying that you would describe the different districts in the comp plan.
that there's a certain base level of certain land use categories, if we try to keep things a little bit higher, some certain, goals related to transition and neighborhood development and things like that. And maybe downtown still needs its little special plan, or maybe there's, some areas that still need a special plan, but do you need them to cover the entire city, and do you need them everywhere? Because I don't want to say they're arbitrary, because at some point, somebody really thought through those boundaries. But at some point, we had to draw a boundary. Could that boundary be different? 100 different ways, just like a land use plan. And so are we spending a lot of time on something that doesn't get us what we need, that we can do with a general plan update? Or maybe there's only some focused areas. I just wonder do you need as many? Do you need as detailed? Do you need them everywhere?
well,
No,
and I
no,
think if
no.
they're out of date, they should go away. They don't exist anymore, we don't use them. They're history. I mean, a area plan that has not been updated in 20 years, forget it. We shouldn't even be looking at it, except in the historical perspective. It's like, okay, we adopted it, and we're focusing on this region for a certain period of time, and after what? Then they're gone.
Okay.
Why are we still reading and looking at what's in a plan that's been out of date for 20 years?
Okay.
Scott, were you going to say something? I thought you had your mic off.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I agree. I mean, I would support getting rid of these. And I think what others have said is right, that there might be certain areas that require special considerations, but I would suggest just addressing those in the overall plan. And then I think that would just make it logistically easier for everybody, particularly staff and the commission.
Okay, all right. We're a safe place. We can have these tough conversations, so thank you. All right.
Actually, Chris, I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes for people to speak honestly and sincerely and respectfully, it can be dangerous. It feels dangerous sometimes. And so we need more reassurance from people that we need people actually to speak what their ideas are and not hold back, as long as it's done respectfully, sincerely,
Yeah.
you know.
We can disagree without being disagreeable.
I just hadn't considered that either, and I'm curious from a staff perspective, your reaction to the idea of consolidating it within the comp plan.
It's our preference.
Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Well,
'Cause we-
For a variety of reasons. It's unmanageable, it's unworkable to continually update these. These areas are not that uniquely different.
No.
Some are 20 years old.
Yep. While you're at it,
Some are inconsistent, some have different land use legends.
Yep.
We have different
was
future
the-
land use maps
Yep.
for the same properties. I mean,
the university
I could go
impact
on and
zone
on.
borders have never made sense to me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I agree with that.
I just don't understand.
It's huge.
I understand why you need a university impact zone just to discuss certain issues, but the boundaries seem arbitrary
That's
to me.
right.
I agree.
I guess if I could just add one more thing, like if there are special areas, those areas can be highlighted. I think that's what I'm hearing from several of you, that there may be special areas that we can pull out. Maybe some will need their own plan, but maybe that special policy direction can be articulated within the same document.
Nice.
Okay. Last question, because you guys have been kind enough to give me more than an hour. Anything else for me? Ask me something tough, and I'll try not to make up an answer, or I'll tell you I don't know.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah,
Good job.
absolutely. You guys are still a fun city. You're a fun one to do this for, because there's a lot of vision. And, you talked about optimism. I feel like there's a lot of optimism here, and it's about things are pretty good. Can we get even farther?
Yeah.
It's not, you're not coming down here. I've worked with plenty of cities where everything's really bad, and it's like, what do we start with? And you're already at a good spot.
But we need to find a way to make sure the conversation isn't controlled by people who are just the naysayers, who just want
Yeah,
to stop
yeah.
things and everything's a bad idea. Because if we don't keep growing, the only direction to go is backwards, and we certainly don't want to do that.
Or they agree with you till it's time to get to the drawing board,
And it's their neighborhood.
and it's their neighborhood.
Well, there's that.
And I can't see the trees anymore.
Other questions or comments for me, us?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
I've two last slides here, just on this next one, we are continuing to have a lot of engagement. And so tomorrow, we're at the Party in the Park, and then we have our continuation of our public workshops, and then some of these pop-up events. This is all on the city's website, specifically our website, that you can find this information on. And so on the next slide, if you could even scan that QR code with your phone just to go directly to it. That online engagement component is still live. It's a lot of fun to zoom in to the city on the big map, drop in different comment types, sometime go there, give it another couple of weeks, and see what other people are writing on the map. And even the kind of the Pinterest-like page with the idea wall. That's interesting to see what people have been posting. And then, of course, you can sure fill in your own ideas as well. But that'll be up for quite some time yet, because our next step after all this engagement is to write this humongous, thick summary document and then present it very succinctly to our steering committee in 90 minutes, which is always a fun challenge. So that was everything I had.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, hold your applause to the end.
All right, are we ready to go on to number 5, presentation and discussion of the 2024 Iowa City Residential Development Analysis?
Yeah, we're just getting our slides up.
This is Rachel.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Rachel Schaefer, Associate Planner. Oh, you're good. Okay. Yep, perfect.
Nobody ever calls me.
Thank you. Alrighty, so agenda item number 5, we're going to sort of go through the data that we gathered and what we learned from the 2024 Iowa City Residential Development Analysis. So every year, the City of Iowa City analyzes local data to identify development patterns and track recent and long-term trends. The goal of this project is to provide accurate information that can inform land use and policy decision-making. One of the fundamental aspects of the planning is accommodating the growth of the community, as we've been discussing even here tonight. And we want to look at where there's a demand for housing. When that goes unmet, what can the city do, and how they might see impacts as far as population growth and the growth of the surrounding communities. Just some important definitions, I guess I wanted to highlight as we go through this document. A lot of you obviously know many of these, but first one being residential development. It's the process in which land is prepared for new dwellings, either as new construction of vacant land or redevelopment on land that was previously developed. We also have final plats, which you all are familiar with, which permanently delineate lots and other features pertinent to the transfer of property. We have building permits, which are the final administrative approval of building plans that allow construction. We have single-family units. That's one principal dwelling on a lot. Those can be attached or detached. Attached being separated by those lot lines. We also have two duplexes, which are two principal units on one lot. And then we have our multifamily, which is our biggest category in the city. So that is anything that's 3 or more principal dwelling units, regardless of the ownership structure. So this also includes our mixed-use buildings. All of those are always considered multifamily. That can be a townhome development, condos, large apartments, everything sort of, anything 3 or more falls under that multifamily. And then we, of course, have the accessory dwelling units, which is our sort of smallest type of dwelling that it can be accessory to our single-family and two-family uses. So I guess just right away jump into the key takeaways from the 2024 residential analysis. So the first one being that subdivision activity in 2024 has dropped well below the average, which with sharp declines across all housing types, especially single-family lots, which fell 75% below the 5-year average. And then notably, we had no new attached single-family or duplex lots platted within the last year. Single-family permits in 2024 slightly exceeded 5-year trends, but also total permits were less than half of the 10-year average, with multifamily at a decade low and almost no attached single-family or duplex activity when it came to permitting. As far as dwelling demolitions, there was a decline from in 2024 from the previous year, 2023, with just 11 units removed in 2024. Again, that's well below the 5-year average of 34 demolitions and the 10-year average of 39 demolitions. More key takeaways as far as the activity in the university impact area, which we sort of just briefly talked about. It was also lower this year due to a lack of the multifamily developments that we had seen in previous years. Furthermore, the trend of converting duplexes to single-family homes, that has continued in that area, but has slowed compared to previous years. As far as vacant lots go, the number of buildable vacant lots increased in 2024, and this was largely due to new infrastructure built in the city. And we also had a revised method of counting info lots with this report. So in previous years, they didn't count lots that were owned by adjacent owners. So if you have your property that you have a single-family home and then you also own the separate lot next door to you, those previously weren't included in our vacant lots because there was an assumption made that those two would always be sold together and remain under shared or the same ownership. We've removed that assumption. We've been seeing parcels divided and being sold off, or people selling those yards recently. So we took away that assumption. So you will see, if you do compare numbers from 2023 to 2024, that's attributing to that jump in vacant land available just because of that method change from 2023 to 2024. Another notable thing is if permitting trends, the big sort of takeaway, I guess, is if permitting trends from 2020 through 2024 continue, the city is expected to only meet 68% of the demand for new housing by 2030, with a deficit of approximately 1,490 dwelling units. So we're definitely in a housing shortage as far as these numbers are telling us. So one of the first things that we look at when it comes to analyzing the residential development and sort of outlook of the city is the final plat activity. So final plats are a leading indicator that for the anticipated number of single-family and duplex dwelling units that will be developed. And to a lesser extent, they can foreshadow multifamily. It's a little harder. There's a little more variation of how many units can be built on a lot platted for multifamily. So this is a better indicator for those single-family and two-family uses. So based on the size of the lots and the preliminary plans from developer and the zoning districts, we can anticipate how many units will be developed based on how many lots are being created via platting. So in 2024, there was only 6 final plats that were approved by council. Nearly all of these plats were created small single-family infill lots. 4 of those plats were 4 of those were responsible for the 13 units you see in this chart, and those are single-family units. And then all of the proposed multifamily that we're getting from plats is all from that Western Home GPD plat that you guys all recently reviewed. So though those some of those appeared like single-family, there were some homes, some duplexes on that Western Homes, those are all counted in multifamily since they're all on that shared lot. For that 55 and older community. So this sort of is just, again, sort of going a little deeper in those numbers. So you can see the comparison of those anticipated lots as far as platting goes. So recent trends in the single-family lot creation is lower compared to historic trends, and you can see that when you're looking at those yellow bars. You can see that decrease in 2024 compared to previous years. And over the past 10 years, the average was 273 units, and the 5-year average brings that down to 221. But we're still well below that in 2024 at only 138 units to be added based on lots platted.
And you
Yeah,
said
go ahead.
that entire red bar of 2024 is just the Western Home development?
Yes, yeah. Okay, and then this just sort of shows where those plats are taking place. So let me see if I can get my pointer up here. There it is, okay. So we have, let's see here, Pine Grove, Part 2, which added 4 single-family dwelling units. We also had the Ronalds subdivision, that was only 2 single-family dwelling units. The Babs First Edition, that added 1 single-family dwelling unit. And then we had Brickyard Hollow, which added 6 single-family dwellings. We also, in that 6 is actually the Highlander Development 5th Edition, which was a commercial subdivision, so that didn't really add to our buildable lots as far as residential uses go. And then that Western Homes is the one we've been talking about with that 55 and older community that added those 130 plus units, supposedly with the platting.
So how does that, so I'm thinking of people hopefully from Iowa City moving into Western Homes and opening up more housing for younger folks. Does that actually?
You mean like freeing up properties?
Right.
Into, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Yeah, that sort of fluctuation in the market. Yeah, opening that up for sure. There's a benefit
So is that
there.
taken into account or not?
Not in this analysis,
Okay.
no.
I don't know how
But-
you'd know how many people from Iowa City did that,
Right.
but
Yeah, move
it
into
certainly
these
is
units.
a transfer of.
Yeah, definitely an interesting
generation.
question, yeah, to see sort of what those tenants end up being once those units are developed, if they're local or coming from afar, perhaps.
Rachel, quick question. On the Highlander
Yeah.
development, wasn't that the piece that turned into ag, back to ag from that Southgate had?
Do you know that answer? I wasn't here when it was platted.
It
so-
was, it created one commercial lot, and the plat that was previously approved, I think it was an outlot. And, you know, the original plat had right-of-way and multiple commercial lots, and the replat got rid of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that right in front of the Highlander between that and the interstate?
It's
or is it-
actually just, you know where Bright Eyes and Bushy Tails is at the end of North Gate?
Just north of that?
Just north of that. And the actual lot is just across the street from that vet clinic,
Oh, yeah.
just at the
makes
end of
sense.
that dead end.
Any other questions before I move on from plats? Okay, great. So in addition to the final plats, we also look at building and demolition permits as some insight into the development process, obviously. So the issuance of building permits is, again, the final administrative approval. So you get your building permit, and that allows you to build whatever unit you got the permit for. Again, it's the last step of this process. So in 2024, 145 units were permitted. And again, that's well below the 5 and 10-year averages that we've seen when analyzing this. So again, you can see that in those dotted lines being the 5 and 10-year. When considering unit types, the total number of single-family detached units permitted did exceed those 5-year trends. So I don't have those up here, but we are, as far as single-family units permitted, we're doing on par with and better than 5 years, the 5-year trends. But multifamily permits were at a 10-year low, and duplex permits were lower than the 5 and 10-year trends as well. So we're sort of staying on par as far as building permits for single-family issuance, but when it comes to those other ones that sort of fill that gap of units, we're not seeing those in 2024. So that red bar is sort of missing if you're looking at the graph. We also look at demolition permits, which these allow the removal of a structure. So when combined with the building permits issued and these permits, it indicates the total anticipated changes in dwelling for a certain year. So in 2024, we had 11 units that were demolished. And when you combine that with the 145 building permits that were issued, in 2024, we're looking at a net gain of 134 units that were permitted to be built. Here's just a map showing sort of where those building permits are being issued to and where the demolitions are occurring. So again, much of the building permit activity, you can see I sort of have circled them in blue, is happening in our newer subdivisions that were platted in previous years. So a lot of them around our city boundaries, our city limits, so in the outskirts of town. And then the demolitions are a little more sporadic, but many of these are for projects that the city, has been in contact with developers, and there's an anticipated, upcoming project, and that's why the demolition has occurred. One major example of that, I sort of put it in purple here. On Dodge Street, there were 2 single-family dwelling units demolished, but then a townhome development was placed there. So sort of at the same time, there were demolition permits, but then subsequently a building permit. So that's a good example there. Any questions about this? Alrighty. So we also look specifically at the permit activity within the university impact area because this includes residential neighborhoods near the University of Iowa campus that contain higher levels of undergraduate students, including but not limited to, the North Side, Goosetown, College Hill, Melrose, and the Millard Orchard neighborhood, and changes to the UIA are often attributed to large-scale redevelopment projects in the Riverfront Crossing District. So those larger-scale rental developments or student housing type projects. So we like to look at this specifically. In 2024, there were 3 single-family detached homes and 1 townhome-style multifamily development developed in the UIA for a total of 8 units added in 2024. And then no residential building permits were issued for the Riverfront Crossing District portion of the UIA. So this is fairly different than 2023, where we saw that large influx of permits and multifamily. So that's sort of reduced and installed as far as 2024 goes. So here are those building permits in the UIA, circled here, that redevelopment project on Dodge Street, what I was talking about previously, and then you can see sort of that lack of permitting happening in the Riverfront Crossing District in 2024.
Did that boundary change, the university impact area? It looks larger than I remember it. No? No? Okay.
Alrighty, and then the last sort of group of data that we look at is the city's vacant lot supply and how those properties may develop. So a build-out analysis of the vacant lot supply estimates how long it would take for the current number of vacant buildable lots to be developed based on 10-year averages in building permits issued per year. So several factors can improve that outlook, such as construction of infrastructure for unimproved lots. And overall, this analysis is more important, again, to single-family and duplex development, just because they're a little more easy to predict that's actually what's going to be developed, this number of units, versus, again, multifamily, where those numbers can fluctuate a little bit. So based on 2024 data, it's anticipated that it would take 3 years to fully develop all buildable vacant single-family detached lots that we have in town, 5.3 years for single-family attached lots, 7.6 years for duplex-sized lots, and 2 years for multifamily lots to be totally built out with units. The anticipated build-out timeframe for vacant single-family lots increased from 2023. You can sort of see that dotted lines there represent what the anticipation was for 2023. And this was due to low building permit numbers that we had in 2024 and the construction of new infrastructure, which made more lots come online. So less permits, but more lots coming online is as part of that, why you're seeing that being increased.
But this doesn't include the Dodge governor. I think I said Dodge Jefferson before. I meant the Dodge governor,
The 9/11.
all that's going on, because that's in '25.
Yeah, and this is just building permits and
Right, and that.
lots.
And even if that rezoning goes through, there won't be a building permit
Right.
for a while,
Right.
particularly if he's going to sell it.
Yeah, that's unknown. But the final plat, if that gets approved, that will be fed into the 2025 analysis.
And I just wanted to note sort of the duplex timeframe, since it is sort of a striking difference from last year. So I believe this increase happened due to the recent creation of duplex lots that we're seeing in some of the newer subdivisions. But we had a lack of those duplex permits for 2024 specifically. So they're just in that development process, and it hasn't occurred yet.
It doesn't have anything to do with the zoning change that allowed more duplexes?
That also would be a factor. Yep, the lot sizing and
Okay,
things. So yeah,
got it.
being more permissive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess any questions on this?
Would that, you wouldn't count like a lot that has a single-family house on it that could be converted to a duplex in this, right? Yeah.
No. And honestly, this doesn't also factor in the availability for mini lots in the city to also have an additional ADU, conversions, things like that. So there are some, outlying situations that we don't tend to see or haven't had a lot of in recent years that aren't factored in here for, a unit here or there. Those are harder to track or anticipate. And sort of the last projection, so to determine if Iowa City's anticipated needs will be met, the city compares the numbers of permits recently issued to the expected population growth. So the population projection we're currently using is from the Metropolitan Planning Organization of Johnson County, and they, in a previous report, projected that Iowa City's population will reach approximately 85,070 residents by 2030. So we're using that number for this analysis, which is an increase of around 10,240 new residents from 2020 to 2026. That suggests a demand of over 4,610 new dwelling units needed within that time frame to meet that new population growth. And when we use the recent permit trends, this suggests that the city will only see 3,120 new units in that same time frame from 2020 to 2030. This accommodates just 68% of the projected housing demand, leaving a deficit again of 1,490 units. This shortfall represents an increase from last year of 430 units. So we're even farther behind than we projected last year. Again, indicating that housing deficit is growing in Iowa City based on permitting trends. So again, this projected deficit may encourage additional growth in nearby cities such as Tiffin and North Liberty, which have seen a proliferation of new residential development, as we've discussed tonight. And this can negatively impact the city's environmental goals as homes are built further away from those employment centers, and the commuting distances, car dependency, and traffic congestion all increase as sort of a symptom of that. In addition, an insufficient supply of housing can increase housing costs, which the supply cannot meet. When the supply cannot meet the demand of new dwellings, Iowa City will become less affordable if this sort of trend progresses. So consequently, it's important to continue encouraging residential growth in areas that we have access, to city services such as infill locations, as well as cities' designated growth areas, which are anticipated to become a part of the city's boundary in the future. So I guess overall, we just encourage you all to keep this in mind as we go through our reviews, and obviously as we're updating this comprehensive plan, something to keep in mind as far as what's sort of going on in the city now and where we need to go from here. So any questions about the report or?
This isn't about the report, but whatever happened to the Carson Farm?
So that land there was an annexation several years ago that was ultimately withdrawn because there seemed to be lack of support from city council. The ownership, I think, is recently going to change, and so we may be seeing some activity out there. The city did recently put in a trunk sewer to provide more infrastructure to that land, and we're working on a regional stormwater system for that area as well, which should help with the growth.
Right. I mean, it was a fairly large area, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the 200 acres or something like that, yeah.
Is that kind of southwest, this area?
It's over by Menards.
South of Raritan Road?
Yeah, south of Raritan, west of 218.
Yeah.
And like when we make a change, so for example, this last year, ADUs and duplex lots were two significant changes to hope to spur growth in that area. However, we're not seeing the results of that. Do we think it's a time issue that it needs more time, or do we still have some other challenges? Because like, for example, I spent a lot of time like driving around North Liberty, Tiffin, some of the neighboring communities, and, duplexes left and right. So it's not based on like a regional market demand, I'd say, for a duplex, but it's something that we continue to observe in Iowa City, and I don't think we've tried to respond to the challenges, but still haven't seen growth in that sector.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what Chris was saying earlier about kind of all the complications that come with land development. And, we can only, and we talked about this when we were working on the text amendments, we can only control the regulations.
Right.
So we tried to do everything we can to make it easier, at least from the regulatory side, to build these types of units. But there's still, property ownership, financing, even ADUs. We've gotten actually a lot of inquiries on ADUs, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah. It's hard to make those more
So, we're not seeing a huge change from those regulations, that's for sure, but maybe over time, we will see some more come online. It's hard to say.
But so for example, with like the code base down Sand Road, Sycamore area that we just made some changes on, are there any duplexes, or is that all single family within that development, Southgate development?
It's a mix of housing types. You're talking about the form-based code
Yeah.
sort of area? Yeah, that'll be a wide array of housing types, from single-family, duplex, some townhome style, things like that, so. Yeah, I guess that's an example of, the permissiveness, allowing them to do that.
So the city, or this report is just done every year as kind of part of the process of,
Yeah.
it's great.
And I think as we're going to get, I sort of focused on the MPO projections because we're going to get updated ones with the comprehensive plan, so we'll sort of have to, it'll be different next year, I'm sure, but, yeah.
Is this also reported out to city council?
Yeah, the city manager has the report and he'll share it with the council.
Okay.
So I remember with the ADUs, we restricted it to owner occupied. And if you hear a lot of requests for non-owner occupied, will you come back to us with that?
Well, actually, the state recently preempted us from regulating ADUs to some extent, and we can no longer require the owner occupancy. So as of July 1st, that will change. And so July 1st, we'll be required to implement that new state law. So if a landlord comes in and wants to build an ADU and rent both the single-family unit and the ADU, that will be allowed.
Maybe we can hear more about that later in a different meeting, or put that on the agenda for a different meeting, like what is the state, what are the implications for Iowa City?
Yeah, if the commission wants kind of a legislative update, we can do that. We're still trying to figure it out, honestly. But we're happy to share what we know.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
But really, that's in line with, I think it was the original intent at that time that we talked about not limiting to owner occupied, and then we took a more conservative approach potentially.
Yeah, staff's recommendation was to get rid of the owner occupancy requirement.
Any other discussion on this? Any other questions? Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Consideration of meeting minutes from May 7th. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Hench.
Second, Townsend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved unanimously. And planning and zoning information, Ann?
So I have, I guess, one announcement. It is Susan and Mike's last month with us. And since I don't know if we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks, I just wanted to tell you how much we appreciate you and your commitment to the commission. I have 2 certificates here. Mike has been on the commission for over 10 years, and Susan, it's been 5. And thank you for your time and your thoughtful comments, and we really appreciate it.
Thinks they have it rough. For the first year I was on the commission, we had Zoom meetings. So, I mean, it's hard to get to know people when you,
Don't remind us of that.
you aren't even, thank you very much.
Yeah. Susan, your face is just a smile. You're just.
Come back and just sit back.
Thank you very much. I've so appreciated both of your voices and felt like I've learned a lot from both of you. So you will be missed.
Absolutely.
And maybe we'll do this all over again in 2 weeks, but.
Or certificates. Yeah.
I do have a question, 2 questions for you. What is the status of the governor?
The applicant
they-
recently, they requested deferral of the 3rd reading.
Because
They wanted it aligned with the approval of the final plat.
I see.
And the council requested, they
I just looked at
accepted
the
that.
voting record and I thought, why did they defer this? Okay. My other question is, speaking of development, so there's a rezoning sign on the corner of Scott and Rochester? I assume it's
Yeah.
for that corner where Vintage was going, and
Yes.
so what do they want to do?
Yeah, that'll be coming back to you soon. You actually might see that at the next meeting, so. If not, you'll have to come back in July.
Tell us what it is.
It's if you remember, it was kind of multifamily with single family and duplex. They're changing it up a bit, adding some more units, which triggers another rezoning. So,
Still for senior housing or
yes, it is.
a different company? A different company?
Yes,
Yeah. What company?
it's Nelson. I think
I'm
Nelson.
getting old.
Gosh, now I don't want to give you wrong information. It's the same group that did the one by Hickory Hill.
Yeah, that's Nelson.
Yeah. We need older people to move out of their homes, open up their homes. Any other comments? Thank you. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
That was Hench and Craig. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.